Hello, I'm Ros Atkins. Welcome to World Have Your Say. Well, we're going to start by talking about the Bahrain Grand Prix. It's day one of the race weekend. You're still discussing if this should be going ahead. Also, whether organisations like the BBC should be broadcasting the race and whether you'll be watching. And in about half an hour's time, we'll turn our attentions to the first week of the trial of Anders Behring Breivik. I wonder if you've been impressed by how Norway's judicial system has grappled with this extraordinary case. Let's go straight back to Pakistan and speak to the BBC's Aleem Maqbool, who joins me live from Islamabad. Aleem, what more can you tell us about this aircraft crash?
Well, only at the moment that this crash happened just outside Islamabad. In the last hour, what we're being told is that there are 127 passengers and crew on board. This was a small, new commercial airline, Borja Air, in Pakistan. It actually just had, according to my information, its first flight on the 6th of March, so only a short while ago. It was due to be landing from Karachi, a 2-hour flight from Karachi to Islamabad. When it hit bad weather, there was a short but very violent thunderstorm at the time of the crash, and it came down, we hear, very close to a residential area.
And I've seen statements coming out of various Pakistani TV channels, but have the airline or the airport commented?
No, nothing as yet. Everyone at the moment is geared towards the rescue operation. Certainly, as you can imagine, emergency officials and emergency vehicles are heading to the site right now, as are a lot of media, I have to say. A lot of the roads around that area are blocked at the moment, but no official word as yet from the airline. It is an airline which did start up a few years ago, just over 10 years ago, but closed down because of financial problems and reopened again. But there has been a history of problems in Pakistan with domestic flights and crashes. There was a crash in the middle of 2010, very close to where I am now in the hills in Islamabad. Again, it was bad weather conditions, which was a contributory factor. But other than that, we don't have any word officially from the airline or the airport services.
Aleem, what more can you tell us about the area where it's come down? You mentioned that plenty of people live in the general area, and how far is it from the airport?
Well, apparently about 5 or 6 kilometers away from the airport. It's a very busy road, the airport road between Islamabad and Rawalpindi, on which the airline sits. And the initial reports were that the plane came down on the highway itself. That doesn't appear to be the case. It's apparently near a settlement just outside the airport boundaries, close to a safari park, actually. But at the moment, I haven't seen any reports from the site as yet. Of course, we're all heading there, but no reports from the site as yet. But the word is that it is very close to a residential area.
We're seeing some pictures being filed by a local TV station as you're talking of the rescue operation happening in the darkness of the evening. Tell us a little bit about the safety record of Pakistani airlines.
There have actually been a lot of problems just over the last 2 years or so. As I say, there was a crash in 2010. People have never been that satisfied with the results of the inquiry into as to why that happened. That was another airline, Air Blue. But over the last year or so, even Pakistan's national carrier, Pakistan International Airlines, has had a lot of problems, primarily with maintenance. But it was also seen as an area which was, in some respects, expanding too quickly. That people were mainly sort of interested in a business opportunity, and that the safety records were not necessarily paramount. But
thank you very much indeed. Let me just jump in there and say thank you very much to you. I know you need to speak to other BBC outlets as well. There's Aleem Maqbool speaking to us live from Islamabad. He is en route to the crash site. Just to reiterate, a Borja aircraft does appear to have come down a few kilometres short of Islamabad. Lots of reports talking about very, very bad weather. It's understood 127 people were on board. It's not clear how many of them may have been killed or injured in the crash. Lots of people already responding to this story on Twitter. Simon in London says, this is tragic news. Let's pray that there are as few casualties as possible. Ahmad saying, I'm extremely sad to hear about the plane crash near Islamabad. And of course on Twitter, as elsewhere, lots of people wanting more information on what's happened and how the passengers may have been affected. We'll do our best to bring you that information here on the BBC. Just to reiterate, just outside of Islamabad, short of the airport, an aircraft belonging to Boja Air has crashed with 127 people on board. We're going to keep you right up to date on that story, and we'll come back to it as soon as we get more information. In the meantime, we're going to turn our attention to Bahrain because it's day one of race weekend there. The Bahrain Formula One Grand Prix will be happening on Sunday. At least that's the way it seems. There have been fierce resistance to this race being cancelled, despite some of you wanting that to happen. Let's speak about this with a number of guests. Bahrain Formula One enthusiast Grace Cunningham is a blogger. She's also a fan. She blogs from Plymouth in the southwest of the UK. Hussein's a businessman and Janadia in Bahrain. And Mohammed joins us from a protest in Badaya in Bahrain. Well, Mohammed, let me start with you. Tell us about the protest you're at.
The protest finished, actually. I just came back from the protest. I can say that it's easily seen that the attendance of the protest was at least 20 times the attendance of the practice race today.
And why were you protesting?
We were protesting to let the world know that about our demands, that we are in need of democracy. It's not a privilege that we want to have. We are in need for democracy. We need to end this discrimination that is happening in this country.
You say you need democracy, and this race going ahead isn't helping that. Hussein, let me bring you in. What's your view? Hussein, can you hear me?
Actually, in my view, I'd rather not make it quite political. I know for a fact. Yes, I can hear you. Good. Okay, so well, my point of view towards the race specifically, let's not make it that political. I'd say that the race itself is definitely a part of some sort of reform towards the Bahrain economy development. I mean, you're talking about a lot of economical enhancements that this race can cause. So there is, as you can say, some sort of reform adjustment towards whatever has been happening. That's in terms of the political side. As we all know, the race has been getting the Bahrain for 3 consecutive years, something up close to $600 million of GDP increase, which basically means that this race is definitely benefiting the country's income. So on a technical perspective, this wouldn't really classify as something that's not part of a democracy or something of the sort. I'm not sure about.
The two of you,
this race has been bringing a lot of friends and a lot of people together as well.
Let me just jump in there. I apologise. There's a bit of a delay on this line, which means that it sounds like I'm very rudely talking over you. But thank you for those comments. Let me just bring Grace in here. Grace, we know you're a Formula One fan. That is established. But will you be watching on Sunday?
Yes, I will be. Of course, there's so much going on around the Bahrain Grand Prix, and as a fan, there's part of you that doesn't want it to be there, but it is there, and it's the sport that you love, and all the politics around it are obviously part of the sport, but it's still the sport. It's the racing that the fans are watching, and the protest in the country, it's highlighting it to the rest of the world, but the majority of fans are watching it for the race.
Mohammed, what would you say to Grace? Doesn't she have a point that actually more people are aware of your protest because of Formula One?
Yeah, a lot of people are aware of our protest, but as you see, the government tries to show that everything is back to normal by having this race. This race has been politicized from the beginning. Even the slogan is unified, which is not true. We are not unified by celebration. We might be unified by suffocation, because we're suffocating every day with tear gas. We're getting injured every day with buckshots. This is the only way we might be unified. As for my colleague who said that F1 has been benefiting our economy, report shows that it has not been. It's barely breaking even. And over that, I would like to ask him, our economy has been hit more hardly by the sacked employees that the government does not want to reinstate. Those who have been sacked only for sectarian reasons. These are the people that build the economy. These are the people that the economy is suffering because they can't buy their everyday needs. So this government does not care about reform. They don't care about the economic development. They're using the race only to legitimize their existence, which is based only on force. And for the rest of the world, if they ignore the fact...
Mohammed, let's give Hussein a chance to respond.
Again, I don't want to get into a lot of politics regarding specific reforms, but replying to Mr. Mohammed as well, to what he said, fine, it has been breaking even, but then again, it is still incurring income. It's creating jobs for other people. It's creating, the race is creating a lot of awareness for other external organizations, let's say, that be interested into and possibly getting started.
Mohammed, I can see you trying to respond, but we've got to let Hussein make his point before you respond, otherwise we're not going to hear either of you. Let's pull up this comment from Damon Hill. He wrote an article in The Guardian newspaper. Lots of you have been responding to it online. It was the most read on The Guardian's website when I last looked. He says, is their cause just or reasonable? I don't know, but without Formula One, perhaps their cause would have had less of a hearing, a point that was echoed by you, Grace, in Plymouth. David's in St. Petersburg in Russia saying, this is damaging for the struggle for human rights in Bahrain. Michael in Johannesburg says, just cancel the race and be done with it. I mean, Grace, don't you have some concern that the sport you love is being used by this government to promote a country that's unified, when in fact that's far from the case?
A lot of the fans, especially on Twitter that I speak to, we're all worried about why the Bahrain Grand Prix is going ahead. And I'm not saying that it's right or that it's wrong that it's there, but it is there, and that's got to be dealt with. And also with regards to it actually carrying on, for me and for a lot of the fans, it is the sport, and there's so many other sports that do go on in Bahrain and they're not being cancelled. It's the fact that Formula One is on a global audience, and the sport has to continue around the world, and there's so many political debates going on in every country, and I just don't think it can be stopped, which is unfortunate because there are so many people that are protesting and they don't want it there, but then there's so many Bahraini people that do want it there, and from being an outside perspective, you don't quite know who is the majority because there's so much conflict within the own country that even in the UK it's hard to tell whether they want it there or not.
So you say the sport has to go on. I wonder if those of you watching, especially if you're a Formula One fan, do you agree with that? You can't start cancelling every event that takes place in a country where there are some human rights criticisms or some concerns about how representative the government is. You can call us up. We're live. It's country code 44 2070 83 72 72. And if you're tweeting, put the WHYS hashtag on your tweets and we'll pick them up. I can see calls coming in from Bahrain, Sudan, Nigeria, India, Canada and Pakistan. We'll hear some more of your reactions to the Grand Prix weekend in Bahrain in a couple of minutes' time. Right, let's switch across to Nuala McGovern, who's with the World Have Your Say team, who are taking your calls. Nuala, what have you got for us?
Well, I can tell you, you are keeping the World Have Your Say producers very busy. There is a full board of calls. You mentioned some of the countries. There's also Lithuania, Mauritius and Ghana calls coming in. And Sadaf from Bahrain, lots of calls coming in from there. He says that protesters are giving the country a bad name, that Formula One brings in lots of jobs and money. So he does not agree with this boycotting of watching Formula One. Also, lots of emails coming in. Matthew in Istanbul, no, I will not watch the Bahrain Grand Prix this year. Furthermore, I think the way the EU and the US treat oil-rich countries is opposed to their claim of human rights for all. And we also have Michael. He responded, he says, if I can watch the race for free, absolutely I'll be watching. I'm an F1 fan and love the excitement of the race. A few local killjoys won't stop me. So you can keep posting, facebook.com/worldhaveyoursay, or give us a call.
Nuala, thank you very much indeed. And if you didn't get any of those contact details down, don't worry, we put them on the screen throughout the show. I'm Ros Atkins, thanks for being with us. In about 15 minutes' time, we'll turn our attention to that extraordinary trial that's been taking place in Oslo this week of Anders Breivik. If you want to talk about that, do get in touch now. But for the moment, we'll keep on talking about the Bahrain Grand Prix. We're also going to get you more information on that plane crash just outside of Islamabad. We understand an aircraft has gone down with 127 people on board. We have some footage of the wreckage on the ground, but we don't have any details about casualties at the moment. Boja Air is the airline, is the operator. It's not been in operation for more than a few months. We heard that from Aleem Makbul. And as soon as we get more information, we will bring it to you. In fact, we've just made a connection to Samab Ahmed, who witnessed the crash. He emailed the BBC. And Samab, we've just got back to you. Tell us what you saw.
Actually, I saw a plane landing right in front of me. I'm about a kilometer away from the landing strip. I could see. Suddenly there was flames. Actually, there were flames all over the place, and actually it was some residential building which it crashed into near Bahrain town, and the reports are suggesting that all the passengers, actually no one survived, and it's a terrible scene. Actually, all the services are actually going to the scene. There's a helicopter in there as well, and there are. I'm actually right near to the Rescue 1122 head office as well, and you could see that actually actually they are rushing to the scene.
When you saw the plane, was it on fire before it hit the ground?
Yes, actually there was no siren. Actually, one of my colleague here, he works for the army, and he phoned up one of his colleague. And he told me that there was some sort of an air pocket. The weather was not. The weather was actually, it was raining, and there was a lightning, and someone actually, that friend of mine he told me that there was an air pocket, and he was actually aligning to land the plane, but he lost the control due to that air pocket, and that was the cause of the accident. But I'm not cause of the crash. But I'm not sure if that is but I just heard from someone actually who told me that.
And what can you tell us about the area where the plane has come down? Can you describe how many people live there and what kind of an area it is?
Actually, the airport itself is actually situated right in the middle of the city, and it's surrounded by residential areas. This is the reason they are actually building a new airport outside the city. And that is one of the reasons. And also, there is an Air Force headquarters there, Chaklala Air Base, and also there's Army. So it's actually a quite congested area. And there are a few residential buildings as well there.
How close are you to the crash site now?
I would say I'm probably a kilometer or 2 kilometers away from the crash itself. But before that, you could see the flames, but now they have put down the flames, and you can't see anything. But that's all I can tell you, actually, at this moment.
So just to confirm, when it first happened, you could see flames from a kilometre away, but now you think the rescue operation has dealt with those flames to the extent that you can't see them anymore?
Yeah, I'm quite sure about that, actually. There's no flames in the air anymore. And you could see, actually, you could hear the services, still ambulances are going to the scene.
Sir, thank you very much indeed for speaking to us and for emailing the BBC. We appreciate your help in reporting this story, and we'll continue to bring you the latest on this crash just outside of Islamabad, just short of the runway. We believe the flight was coming in from Karachi, 127 people on board. We don't know how many people may have lost their lives or been injured, but of course, looking at that footage of the wreckage, we do fear the worst for some of those on board. We'll continue to bring you more on this as we get it here on the BBC. Now, just before we spoke to Samab, we were talking about the Bahrain Grand Prix and whether it ought to go ahead, whether you'll be watching it if you are a fan of the sport. Let's pull up this message from Alan in Germany, who emails, "By holding the Grand Prix, they are all complicit in the brutal treatment meted out by a small minority to an equality-seeking majority. I will not be watching this particular weekend. Shame on all of them there." Well, let's put that message to Benoit, who joins us from Belgium. Hi, Benoit. Tell us a little bit about yourself and whether you'll be watching.
Hello. Yes, I'll be watching the race on Sunday, but I think that Formula One should have been go there. The race should have been cancelled because of the situation, the political situation in the country. But as a fan, I will watch the race. But I don't forget the political situation. I think it's important to watch the race and also to know what happens there outside the track. And that's what we made on the. I'm editor for a French website, and we speak, of course, about sport, about the results, but also about everything happens outside the track and about the political situation. I think it's important because the Formula One go there. It's a good opportunity to speak about that country because
That's a point a number of fans have been making. If it weren't for this Grand Prix, the protesters would not have the kind of profile that they do at the moment. As if we need any more evidence of the global appeal and the global importance of Formula One. At the moment, we're getting calls from Angola, Spain, Zimbabwe, Afghanistan, Tunisia, Malaysia, Iraq, South Africa and Switzerland. We'll try and get more of you onto the air. And of course, lots of you watch BBC World News in Bahrain, and unsurprisingly, you're getting in touch with the programme. Let's bring in Betsy. Betsy, tell us where you are in Bahrain and what your point is.
Good evening. I'm living in Jufair in Bahrain. I've lived here for 32 years, and I strongly believe that the Formula One should go ahead this year and every year. Bahrain is a wonderful international host for Formula One, and 80% of the Bahraini people want this race to go ahead. Unfortunately, most of the international media are focusing only a few hundred extremists who are getting all the publicity saying no to the Formula One.
But Betsy, isn't it the case that 80% of people may support the Grand Prix, but 100% of adults don't have a say in who's in power in your country?
I don't think that's correct. Have you read the Bahrain Constitution?
Well, I haven't read every word of it, you'll understand, but I understand the principles that are in it.
Well, I have to say that one area that's constantly ignored by international media is the fact that over 10 years ago, when the current king came to power, he voluntarily began social, democratic and political reform in Bahrain. And Bahrainis enjoy many freedoms: freedom of speech, freedom to protest whenever they want, but not the freedom to conduct violent rioting and thuggery on the streets of Bahrain.
Well, as you're talking, Betsy, Mohammed, who's been protesting today, is trying to respond. Mohammed, let's bring you in and hear the point that you want to make.
Thousands has been arrested, and they are still in prison for protesting. Our Prime Minister has been ruling for 42 years. What kind of democracy would have the same Prime Minister for 42 years? Bahrain has been abusing all kind of human rights. My friend is sentenced for 15 years for establishing a website. Another blogger was tortured to death, and till now nobody was held accountable for what they did.
All of you, thank you very much indeed. Betsy in Bahrain, Mohammed in Bahrain. We also had guests in the southwest of England as well, and Benoit in Belgium. Thanks to all of you. As ever, as we always say on World Have Your Say, we have a limited time on the TV to talk about one subject or another, but you can carry on the conversation online. Facebook.com/World Have Your Say is the address. To those of you who called up from Kuwait, the UK and Gambia, I'm sorry I didn't get your calls on air. We're going to talk about Anders Breivik after the break and whether you've been impressed by the Norwegian justice system. Well, joining me to talk about the extraordinary events at the Breivik trial in Oslo this week are Dr. David Holmes. He's a criminal psychologist and he's live with us from Manchester. Tyrrell is in Oslo. Her sister was shot by Breivik on the island of Utøya. And Nida Khan is a freelance journalist and a blogger who's live from New York. All three of you, you're very welcome. And of course, you're welcome to speak directly with each other. Tyrrell, let me begin with you. It must have been unimaginably hard watching this week. Tell us how you found it.
Yeah, of course it's hard because now this week he is explaining himself and the they talk about what happened to everyone on Utøya and in Oslo. So I think it's hard, absolutely, to listen to what he has to say, and that is so empathetic, and all his opinions is now showing in the courtroom.
And of course, it's been hard. We would have expected that. But now you've been through the first week. Do you wish it wasn't happening?
No, I don't wish that, actually, because if he didn't have a trial, if he was shot on Utøya, all the remaining relatives from those who died and those who got shot wouldn't have his opinion or see how it's like now, because then there would just be his propaganda and his pictures that he obviously made himself, and just stories about how he would have been. So now we can see for ourselves how he is and how he behaves and his reasons. So I'm really happy that we have a trial, but it's hard to listen to, of course.
And I think, Tiril, it's fair to say a lot of our viewers around the world have been surprised and shocked by how many Norwegians share your opinion that it has been good to have him in court saying his piece. Dr. Holmes, what's your view of this? How have you reacted to the Norwegian insistence on him having his moment in court?
I think I've kind of taken a slightly different angle. I'm more worried sort of at the global picture. I think it's wonderful to show the kind of Norwegian libertarian sort of justice system. It's open, it's transparent, it enables the people within the country to see justice being done, in fact, throughout the world at the moment. However, you are giving a platform to someone who actually wants that platform, someone who would have probably killed these people in order to get that platform, and you're doing the very thing that he would want. It's a case of everything he is saying is being transcribed and translated for the entire world via their press, and that it really does worry me, because the parallel between this kind of propaganda and the kind of propaganda which you may have seen, you know, emerging from the Depression in the 30s is very worrying.
Tiril, are you not worried about the long-term consequences?
I am kind of worried about the long-term consequences.
And I was wondering, Tiril, what about you? Are you worried about what this might be doing to the country in the long run?
Well, I see it this way, that the aftermath of the 22nd of July was something so unexpected for Breivik. We showed each other love, and we met it with more democracy, and it brought us all closer together. And you could get a hug from a stranger if you look sad after the 22nd of July. And now he is spreading his propaganda and to other people in the world, but he have to defend. I think that this aftermath or the consequences of his action didn't get the way that he wanted it to be.
Nida in New York, let's bring you in.
Yes, thank you for having me. First of all, my condolences to all of the family members. I can't even begin to imagine what it's like to sit in the courtroom and hear all of this vitriol and hatred coming from this man. And while I agree with Dr. Holmes that it is dangerous to give him this platform, especially for such a long amount of time that he's been given, by the same token, I think it's good that we are focusing on it, because the world needs to see what this man is thinking and the larger context of these right-wing conservative groups that are both in Europe and in the US. I believe the Hope Not Hate organization came out with a study this week about how there's at least 300 groups around the world that are anti-Islamic, anti-government, and that's a very, very disturbing and dangerous rise. And I think we in the media need to look at how we cover these stories as well. You know, why isn't Breivik termed a terrorist? Why is he portrayed as just a lone, disturbed man? Why isn't he depicted in the larger context of this troubling movement we see around the world?
All three of you, let me read you this comment from Grant, who posts on Google+. Both Sky and BBC News channels have carried extensive coverage. I do not understand why it should take up so much of our news time. it's nothing to do with the UK, and we know that he is guilty. So why broadcast so much? Well, it's certainly true that not just the BBC, but all of the major TV networks have carried a great deal of coverage of this first week of the Breivik trial. Dr. Holmes, has it been too much, not just in the UK, but in the way that all the main rolling news networks have picked up this story?
I think probably, you know, it's one of those ace-in-the-hole stories, isn't it, where you've actually got someone in a courtroom proclaiming his reasons for a large killing. I mean, often in these situations, you do not have the newsworthiness of someone in court actually talking literally about his motivation for killing people. So yes, it's going to be of world interest. There is intrigue and world interest in most large crimes, and this one in particular is being sort of played out in detail. So yes, you can see why there's world interest, and let's face it, if it wasn't actually of interest to people, it would not be dominating the news. It's the way the media works. So, and perhaps there is, you know, justification for seeing this chap, particularly from an intellectual point of view, people who can see through his arguments, can see the limitations of his rhetoric. However, my main concern is all of that media is being broadcast to people who are not quite so intelligent, who may take it far more literally, and in fact may already subscribe to his views.
Well, Dr. Holmes and Tyrell and Nida, let me introduce one more guest into our conversation. Lisa Bjurweld is a Swedish author who writes about Europe's far-right groups. And Lisa, you've been on World Have Your Say before. Thank you for giving us your time again. You've been in court today. It's been another extraordinary day of testimony. Tell us a little bit more about what Anders Breivik said.
Well, yeah, this is the final day and everyone has been very much prepared, saying this will be the toughest day for survivors and for the relatives, because today he came into all the details of the massacre on the island, and he was explaining how, well, all the gruesome details, basically how he was shooting everyone at least 2 or 3 times to make sure they were dead, how he was yelling, you know, this is your day to die, you Marxist, and things like this. So I know a lot of people had to take breaks, even journalists had to go out and take breaks. For me, covering right-wing extremism, I'm kind of distanced in an emotional way. I'm more interested in the ideological aspect and if any new information will transpire, and it hasn't really. It's mostly been interesting to see how he's acting and, you know, the way he's acting in court, basically, he as a person.
And with us, Lisa, is Tyrell, who's live from Norway, and her sister was on the island, and fortunately she survived. Tyrell, before I ask you about what we've heard today, I must just ask you about your sister. Is she okay now? Have her injuries improved? Have they fixed themselves?
Yes, her injuries are improved, but like many of the survivors, it's difficult to sleep and to eat, and she says that she's fine, but she just came home from the courtroom, and it was very difficult for her to hear what Breivik had to say. And she also said that he had been mistaken by some of the facts about his round on Utøya, and she's tired, of course, but this whole event has brought the whole family closer together, so that's the good part that we are focusing on.
Have you thought today that maybe you would just want to turn it off, not hear it at all?
Well, I do turn it on and off, actually, because it's too much to take in. And this is just the first week of 9 weeks, and my sister is going to be a witness in this trial, so it can be too much. And but I think it's good that it's in the open, actually.
Tyrell, thank you very much indeed. We're going to take a short break here on BBC World News, but then we'll keep talking with you and with Lisa and Dr. Holmes and Nida. We're also going to be joined by the Secretary-General of the Islamic Council of Norway. So do keep your comments coming in. I'll try and put some of them to our guests in the last few minutes we have together. But first of all, let's take a break for a couple of minutes. Hi, I'm Ros Atkins. Thanks for joining me on today's World Have Your Say. We're talking about the trial of Anders Breivik, probably the biggest story of the week. We're also discussing whether the Bahrain Grand Prix should go ahead. Well, it looks like it's going to go ahead. It's day one of practice today, qualifying tomorrow, and the race on Sunday. So I suppose we're more talking about whether broadcasters should carry the race and whether you'll be watching it. That conversation's happening on facebook.com/World Have Your Say. But throughout the hour, we've also been trying to bring you more information on this plane crash in Pakistan. I can see that the AFP Newswire has just said there's no chance of any survivors from this crash, according to local police. The plane crashed during what is widely reported to be bad weather in Islamabad. Police officer Fazil Akbar told the AFP news agency there is no chance of any survivors. It will only be a miracle. The plane is totally destroyed, and we can see some of the wreckage in those pictures which we've received in the past few minutes. As we get more information on what's happening at the scene of the crash, of course, we'll bring it to you here on the BBC. In the meantime, though, let's switch back to our conversation about Anders Breivik. We have Lisa, who's a Swedish journalist, a regular contributor to World Have Your Say. She's been in court today. Tyrell's sister was on the island of Utoya when Anders Breivik arrived. Fortunately, her injuries were not life-threatening. We'll speak to Dr. Holmes again, a psychologist in Manchester. But first of all, Mehtab Afsar is Secretary-General of the Islamic Council of Norway. Sir, thank you for joining us.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
Let me read you a message that a gentleman called Nick has written on his blog. He says, I was going to post the link to Breivik's propaganda video, but I decided not to because this just plays into his desire to use the trial as a platform to spread his warped and dangerous ideas. Now, some people think in a different way that's what the court has been doing. What's your view?
Well, I agree with that gentleman that that can, be used as a propaganda, and maybe it is the wish of Breivik, and that is what maybe he is doing, and that is he wanted to. And of course, I followed the discussion, but somehow I dropped out, so I was not able to follow all the discussion. You were earlier talking about the Norwegian libertarian system, which I'm happy that we have it here, and that we can actually listen from him what he did and why he did. I was in the court today, and I was listening to him almost face to face, and it was a brutal the way everything he described, and I was at that time thinking that that is broadcasted all over the world, and it may be and it can give the energy needed to those anti-Islamic groups, fascist groups, and groups like Norwegian Defense League or other groups who are actually working against minorities with their hateful propaganda. So I can, at some extent, agree with the gentleman who is saying that maybe this trial is, giving that platform to...
Okay, so that was your perspective from court. Lisa, you were there too. Did you have concerns that this was a platform this man doesn't deserve?
Not at all. I mean, I have a completely contrary opinion. As a journalist, I really believe it should be broadcast, because one of the central conspiracy theories of this huge European anti-Muslim movement is that the media is censoring the truth from the people. They're keeping the truth about immigration, about so-called Islamization and so on. So I've been sitting as an expert in Norwegian television, where we're not broadcasting, but we're just referring, and that gives the audience a sense that the media, has to kind of filter the truth in order to get it to the people, which is exactly what Breivik wants. And to be fair with you, his manifesto is already online. That's the biggest, for him, it's the biggest PR thing. He's even called these actions, these horrible actions, a PR operation just to spread his manifesto. So that's still a much more potent piece of propaganda.
So you would rather see it all on the air. Dr. Holmes, just very quickly, what about you?
I don't like seeing it on the air, and the idea of this chap, you know, basically giving his message to intelligent people who can see straight through it, again, I reiterate, it's probably not. He's posing himself, he's a manipulator. If he's got a kind of disorder, it's sort of psychopathy, it means that it's more kind of less mitigating, it's more kind of aggravating when it comes to charges. He's of clear mind. He's showing an immense amount of strength.
Well, you say, it's interesting you say he's of clear mind. Of course, whether he's insane or not is one of the key issues of this trial. We've got to leave it there. Dr. Holmes, Lisa, Mehtab, and all of you who've taken part, thank you very much indeed for your contributions.